Lesson 9, 9.1, Epithelial Tissue. One of our characteristics of life we discussed back in Lesson 1 was that living organisms are organized. This is our organizational hierarchy. Also, it's kind of been our roadmap over these last few lessons. We begin with atoms, molecules, some large biological molecules, and then cells. And we are currently at the tissue level of organization. A tissue is a group of specialized cells. There are four primary tissue types: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. In this first lesson, we will be examining epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue consists of sheets of tightly packed cells, and that is very important. These are tightly packed cells that are right up against their neighbors, and they line all body surfaces. That could be external surfaces, the skin, but also internal surfaces, the inside of the digestive tract, the inside of blood vessels, inside of the heart. Anywhere there is a body surface, there will be a sheet of epithelium on it. Some other characteristics about epithelial tissue. The epithelial tissue itself is avascular, which means that it does not have blood vessels. It must get all of its nutrients and oxygen as well as dispose of waste through diffusion. There are no blood vessels in epithelium. It is very highly mitotic. Epithelial tissue constantly goes through mitosis. Some of its functions: protection. So, for example, the skin is protective, but also secretion, absorption, filtration, and in some cases it is a membrane for rapid diffusion to take place. The functions can vary because the structure and the location of epithelium can vary. We classify epithelial tissue based on two criteria. The first one is the number of layers of cells. A simple epithelium consists of a single cell layer. Stratified epithelium consists of multiple layers of cells stacked on top of one another. So this is the first criteria. The second criteria for classification is the shape of the surface cell. Obviously, if it's a simple epithelium, there is only one layer. But in the case of stratified epithelium, we're looking at the shape of the surface cells. There are some that are very thin, flat, kind of pancake cells. This is called squamous epithelium. Some others that are cuboidal in shape, and others that are tall and narrow. This would be called columnar epithelium. And we can mix and match all this. We can have simple squamous, or we can have stratified squamous. We can have simple cuboidal, or we can have stratified cuboidal. Here are some examples. The picture up in the top left, that is simple squamous if you look at the surface view. So you see the kind of irregular shaped pancake-ish cells. The dark spot is the nucleus. Down below that we can see what it would look like in cross-section. And these are very, very thin cells. Down in the lower left, that would be an example of a simple cuboidal cell. This is a kidney tubule. Looks kind of like a donut. The white area is the opening inside the tubule, and it is lined with a layer of simple cuboidal. So when looking at this, think about a garden hose, and if you take a garden hose and cut it in half and then look at the end, you see the wall of the garden hose, and then you would see the opening, the lumen. And this is a cross-section through a kidney tubule. Again, think of the garden hose. Some other examples: simple columnars over on the bottom right. These are some tall, narrow cells. And then we have an example of a stratified squamous in the upper right. This would be stratified squamous cells, so multiple layers, and that top layer is the little thin pancake squamous cell. there are some junctions that can occur between epithelial cells. Recall one of the characteristics is that these are right up against their neighbors, closely packed. An adhesion junction is like a little spot weld. This is what holds these cells together. In the diagram, the blue represents the plasma membrane of two neighboring cells. You can see the filaments of the cytoskeleton that we discussed back in lesson 3. Those are anchoring to the plasma membrane of each cell, and then there are proteins that extend outside the cell and they reach over and they grab the neighboring cell, and that's what holds the epithelial cells together in the sheet. There are some others that are called tight junctions. These form a waterproof seal between epithelial cells. So in areas such as the urinary bladder, where we need a waterproof surface, we have tight junctions. And one other is called a gap junction. A gap junction consists of protein channels that span the plasma membrane, and they are butted right up against similar channels in a neighboring cell. And so this is going to allow molecule ions to pass from one cell into another, and so these cells can communicate and respond in a coordinated fashion.